talking about. Why I TikTok. Okay, and I think we're live.
Everyone.
Hi, welcome everyone. We have a very special Summer of Sarah MacLean chat tonight. So welcome. My name is Dana.
And I am Kelly, and we are thrilled, over the moon, exploding sparkles from the inside to have Sarah MacLean here with us today to celebrate Bombshell, the first book in the Hell's Bells series.
Yes. Oh, I have it too. Yeah. Look.
Oh, look at us.
Do it too.
So if you didn't know, last summer, Kelly and I and the rest of our book club read every single one of Sarah MacLean's books.
Thank
for an
you.
entire summer. It was complete joy and a bright spot in our 2020 journeys. So as we return to the MacLean universe, it's really nice to be back together again for another interview special. So thank you again for joining us, Sarah.
Thank you for having me, you guys. I love this group so much because it just gives me so much joy. And also, I'm not afraid to read your captions. So.
You know there will always be love there.
That's true. It's not. Look, it's hard out there. And like before 2020, I had a heart of like stone cold ice, and it didn't matter. Like if I saw someone saying something bad, I was like, it's fine. I'm powering through, like tough skin. But no, it's too much now. So now I just basically stick with you.
The MacLeaners, we have you covered.
Exactly.
So we have so many questions for you that Dana and I have been compiling. For everyone watching, we're going to have 10 minutes at the end for your questions as well. So make sure you have them ready. We'll have a little game before that to give you a heads up. I think that's all of our housekeeping. We can dive right in. First of all, Sarah, congratulations, hitting both New York Times bestseller and USA Today bestseller for Bombshell.
Thank you.
How does it feel to have the release be so explosive?
It does feel explosive, doesn't it? It's so weird. I've had this book, I've had this series in my head for years. And when I was writing it last year, I'm sure you've talked to other people about this too, but writing in 2020 was a very weird experience. And it was weird for lots and lots of reasons that are, I'm sure is the same as like being a lawyer in 2020 or being a teacher in 2020 or being like a human in 2020. But also writing in 2020 felt so like insulated in a way that for me, I'm a hyper extrovert. So writing for me is always about conversations with other people, being in coffee shops. I work so much better when I'm around other people doing other things. And that was not like, I wrote this book alone in my house at my desk, just trying to write through the pandemic. And so I really just like opened a vein and wrote the group of people who I wanted to be with and the world I wanted to experience. And so it's like fanfic of my own fantasies.
I love that.
So then when it was finished and I looked at it and I was a little bit like, this is a weird book, I think. I'm not sure this is quite what anybody expected this book to be. But I really love it. I think you all know, I don't usually talk about books this way because I never know how I feel about a book, but this book feels really close to me. Like, it feels like I wrote a fantasy for all of you, but it was also for me in a lot of ways. So the fact that it came out and people are like, this is so fun. This is so adventurous. It's a riot. It's so, all I wanted was for it to be fun for all of you.
It was.
And it seems like it is. And so I'm really, really glad that it worked because it could have gone the other direction and been really sad. So.
Yeah, I think feeling
Thank you all for reading it.
We all came together around your books, which I feel like shows how
last summer
creativity builds community too. And I'm so excited for everyone to now have this book that you've kind of poured your heart into. So you talked a lot about how Cecily and Caleb had intended to be like a novella and a short story previously that you just didn't have time to write with your scheduling. So when you had the aha moment that like Cecily was going to be a Hell's Belle, was it difficult to expand their like intended book into their intended like romance into like the full length story after that, or did it come naturally?
That's a good question. I had intended, yes, for Cecily and Caleb to be a Christmas novella, because that's what you do with that extra character. That is a romance rule. If you have an extra character in a series and you don't have plans for a fourth book in a series, in that case, you give them a Christmas novella and move forward. But Cecily is so cool. And I feel like she was so different than her sisters. And she was really, she was a clown in a lot of ways in that, that series, Scandal and Scoundrel, right? She was the troublemaker. She was mayhem. She was chaos, that whole experience. Right. And then, after that was done, I knew I was writing Hell's Bells, and I started doing a lot of inputting of other great gangs in media. Like I watched a lot of the A-Team, and I watched, all the Marvel movies, and I watched all the Ocean's movies. And I realized that when you build a gang, you need that sort of chaotic femme fatale, or that like chaotic bombshell. And I thought, oh, well, I have her. She's there. And she has this kind of very steady hero who is with her and can play the role of a hero in this series. Because I think the goal of this series is really to set up men as allies in a lot of ways. Like, it's not your story, dudes. Your job is to like stand next to us in the sun, right? And let us be powerful and be strong and take control and, burn it all down. And your job is to help us, like, and support us. And that's so Caleb. Oh yeah. So it wasn't that hard to expand it. I knew almost instantly that she was going to be a Belle. And I also knew I was going to make readers happy too, because you have all emailed me about her. So,
I mean, her and Benedict, right? Like,
you're not. Benedict is not coming back in this series, but I mean, maybe he'll like dance by at something. But
there you go. I mean, what's so great too about the series, right, is that we not only get all of this wonderfulness from Cecily and Caleb, who we've loved for a long time, but we get to meet all of the Belles. We kind of get another glimpse, another part of this world that you're creating. And like all of your series kind of start this way, with this entry into what feels like a new world, which is so exciting. But does that make that like kind of intimidating as an author to be like, okay, I have to create this romance, I have to handle all of this setup? How do you balance all of that?
I had basically forgotten when I started that Cecily had this whole other family that I had introduced. Like, I mean, she has sisters, and they are critical to her. Like, I can't just, send them all on a trip. Right? It's like a big family trip. Cecily couldn't go
without Cecily.
Exactly.
It would be so sad.
So, and there was actually a lot of fun. I had a couple of moments, like, for example, like I said earlier, Cecily was a clown, she was comic relief a lot, especially in Day of the Duchess, which is such like a weighty book. Cecily's supposed to be the fun one. And, but in The Rogue Not Taken, and I had forgotten that I had made her car sick. I mean, she's carriage sick, right? And it's funny when she pukes on King's shoes. But like, when she's in her own book, throwing up is not great. No. So, but there were these great moments where I realized like, oh, this really is kind of leveling up for the MacLeaniverse, in the sense that there's always been, it's always designed to feel as though you're opening a new door. Like, you're living in my house. Sorry, guys, but it's true. You're living in my house, and then, every series, you find a new door, and you open it up and the house still all exists, but like now there's a new wing. And in this case, when you open that door, it was very clear to me that I had to also like really make sure that you remembered there was another whole house. Mm-hmm. And that was really fun for me too, because I always layer the books with Easter eggs. You all know that because you've read them all, together. But there were so many Easter eggs in this book that I could layer in. And now, 15 books in, there are so many new places. There are so many places that are just established. If there's a casino, it's this casino. If there's a sex club, it's this sex club. If there's a house full of women in the country, it's this house full of women in the country. And that's really fun. I really enjoy doing that. But to answer your question, starting a new series, I always a little bit cross my fingers and hope that you'll come on the journey with me, because you are meeting a whole batch of new people. And I do want it to feel like there are about a dozen doors that could be opened, because I have plans to open many of them. So I want you to wonder which ones are going to be open in the next book.
We're definitely wondering. I have so much highlighted that it's like, what is she going to do with this now?
Mary's asking, when will she puke? She's not going to puke, Mary. I don't want that.
It's not living her best heroine life.
No, she's not going to puke.
Nick totally went back to Daring and the Duke, where like the list of the potential bells was, and like, who is this one? Who is this one? And so that was like such a fun like thing to like reminisce about, like last year, where we were all like, who is this?
Theorizing.
But like thinking about like the creative door and like how like we're opening a new chapter with the series, you're kind of also breaking your own rules with the title, which is so different from all of your past books. And it's obviously fantastic. And it's like really interesting how we meet in Day of the Duchess. It's like your first title that wasn't a rhyme, and like it wasn't a pun, and you kind of continue to like shift the titles. So like what inspired the Bombshell like single word title? And do you think that, you're going to continue on like this different title path?
So the answer to the last question is yes, these 4 books are already titled. They're just not announced. So, and they are all single words. So, and the idea, so when I wrote 9 Rules to Break When Romancing a Rake, the intent, and I think I've said this to you guys before, was never for that to be the actual title of the book, because it is a nonsense title. And I just want to state for the record that I know it is a nonsense title.
No, but we love it still.
And I remember, and I talked to we pitched it. My agent was not a romance agent. And so she was like, okay, I've talked to somebody who knows about romance. And the goal is like, none of these editors know who I am. So we have to make the subject line great. What do you think about like a rhyming title or whatever? And, so we came up with that. And then my editor was like, no, we're doing this. And
the whole series.
That locked me into numbers and rhymes, which means that there were 3 more nonsense titles. And then, or 2 more nonsense titles. And then when we moved into the casino series, I instantly had a rogue by any other name, like pretty fast. And then I was sort of like, hang on a second. How is it possible that doesn't exist? That title should exist.
Yeah.
And it didn't. And then we sort of, I don't want to say we invented the rhyming, the like idiomatic title, but we started with The Rogue Not Taken. And then all of a sudden, like historicals just kaboomed with all these, plays on words, which was a different kind of movement in historical from what had come before, which was like the rake who, and a rake in silk or something, right? Like it was sort of, everything was different then. And then when of course we sort of moved forward, and it felt like there was such a thing as a MacLean title. And when you heard a title, you were like, oh, that's clearly a Sarah MacLean title. And when we got to this series, it was twofold. It was one that I wasn't sure I could come up. I noodled around with a bunch of different concepts and didn't like any of them. And I was really bored with that like cheeky title in a lot of ways. Like I didn't want it to be a MacLean title. I wanted a MacLean title to be something new. And so we came up with using words that are considered to be modern and words that are often weaponized against women, particularly sexually, as the words. And then when we did the research, it was like Bombshell's been around since the 1700s, so it was fine. But it would have been fine anyway. I mean, I think we would have gone with the modern words anyway, no matter what, because as I've said to you guys before, historical romance is about our modern world, in my opinion. So I would have been fine with it anyway, but it actually worked out great. So, that's a long answer to, I wanted a MacLean title to feel different again. And so now, I don't know, maybe the whole genre is going to go back to single word titles.
Starting
then I'll have to think of something new again.
I mean, I think that's the thing. There's so much about this book feels like fresh and different as you're going into it. And like we did it with the cover too. Like once we realized what the title was, suddenly it was like, and we had kind of moved in this direction with the last series with this historical romance authors at Avon particularly usually have their own font, and it's usually hand lettered. There's a lovely older woman there who hand letters. She's an artist and she hand letters your fonts. And then like, that's the MacLean font forever. So if you have, I see you have my books behind you, Kelly. Yeah. those early books, the first 3 series are in MacLean fonts. You can see they're like hand lettered. But then in Wicked and the Wallflower, we sort of said, okay, well, it's a little bit darker. We're moving out of Mayfair. Can we do something that's not so serifed? And so this became the MacLean like name font. And then in Wicked and the Wallflower, it had sort of a combo. And then, but with this, we were like, okay, it's modern. We're going to do like a Helvetica, like really make sure it's clear that it's super modern. It's like sharp, sexy. Yeah.
Yeah. Now you've all heard me talk for way too long about font, but
our favorite. It is like so interesting, that kind of behind the scenes process. But yeah, so I mean, where we left off with Daring and the Duke, you are literally like burn down the patriarchy, the aristocracy. How do you feel like how did that leave you then at the start of Bombshell? Like, what did this mean for the MCU to have ended your last book that way?
Yeah, well, I mean, caring about an heir is probably off the table for a little while. I had a conversation. I remember having a conversation with, was it Jen? I can't remember. Jen, who hosts Fated Mates with me, about Daring and the Duke at the end, and her going like, well, this is like, you've now done it, right? Like there's no going back to just like idle dukes. And I was like, there really isn't. So, but I don't like idle. I've never liked an idle hero. Whenever I have written a hero who's like a little bit idle, it's always been a lot harder for me to write those books because I like a hero who like has a job and has work to do. So Caleb was sort of the natural, I think, next hero for me in a lot of ways because he definitely wasn't a duke.
Yes.
And also this series felt like the really natural next MacLean step. Like, let's do a girl gang and let's make the big duke a duchess and like see where we go from here. Because I mean, I like many historical romance readers do love a duke. So
yes.
I just have to figure out how to do it in different ways now.
Exactly.
And speaking of Caleb, we met him in Day of the Duchess, and he is the American. Obviously, there's going to be spoilers in this chat. Did we say that up front?
I forget if we did. Major spoilers coming.
Yeah, you should get off if you haven't read the book.
If you don't want to hear it.
Sorry.
Catch the replay.
I just realized, oh no. So we learned that that's not true. He's not American. Born and raised.
He's not American. No.
So how did his?
I mean, I think he'd probably tell you he's an American, but yeah.
Yeah, I think he's given up on his British connection.
Exactly. He's not like a fan of England.
Yeah.
But did that like backstory develop when you were sitting down to write Bombshell, or did you kind of know at the time that he was not who he thought he was?
So you are probably the crew that will be least surprised that I actually just really like a hero with a deep, dark secret. And I like them so much that when I write them in earlier books, I just write them with deep, dark secrets and like cross my fingers and assume they'll all become clear. And Caleb and Sarah have a conversation in Day of the Duchess where she like kind of says like, I know you have a secret. And of course he does, because he was going to be a hero. So I did not know. And the truth is that I very rarely know when I'm writing. It usually takes me about 80. My books run about 100, 110,000 words. And it usually takes me about 80,000 words before I know what the secret is. But I sort of hold my breath and hope that it works out. Right. But pretty fast. When did I know? I think I knew that he was connected to, in order to write the book, I think, well, one of the things that I think is often a struggle, particularly with romantic suspense, and this isn't romantic suspense, but it has a little bit of that like rompy adventure feel. So, there's a quest. It's a quest book in some ways. And so, one of the failings of those books for me often as a reader is that the heroine is on one path and the hero is on the other path. And like, they only ever they're intersecting lots, but they're not intersecting on each other's journey, like quests or journeys. And so I knew at some point Cecily's work with the bells was going to have to intersect with Caleb's past. And that's when it became clear, like, okay, there's some, like, the bully boys are going to be a part of Caleb's past, or like a part of Caleb's secrets. And then it was pretty clear that he couldn't be an American because the other options made him not less noble in a lot of ways, I think. So, and he still had to be, but he also was not going to be a secret Duke, right? Like that was not on the table. So, yeah.
And I think we see a few different kind of hero hallmarks of yours with Caleb, where you have this theme throughout your work that name is destiny, and characters choosing their own names is really important. And I'm assuming then that means, from everything you just said, that Caleb came before Peter, which is what he was known before he left England.
Yeah.
So how did you end up coming up with the name Peter?
I think it was more a question of, I knew I wanted them to have really like British, like I wanted it to feel like there had been a possibility of another whole life for them, for him and his sister Jane, right? So Peter is just it's like a really strong, I wanted it to be like a really strong English name that I probably would never name a hero.
Yeah.
For no offense to Peters in the room, but I just probably would never name a hero Peter. But I remember when I say we because I remember when I named Caleb in Duchess, I was like, I want him to be like un-American. Like, what's the most like cowboy shit we can come up with? And my friend Louisa and I like sat down and we were like, all right, what are the real American names? Like that feel like it could have come out of the American West. Yeah. And I'll tell you guys something that I haven't told anybody, but at some point there was a whole other option for this book, like a whole second possible, like literal plot from the ground up that involved a kind of like American, like a kind of Annie Oakley style, like American, like cowgirl, like Western, whatever, who turned up in London and was Caleb's actual wife, and he had won her in a game of cards, like in America. And for a while, I was like, this is amazing. And I sort of started plotting out this idea with my friend Louisa, who's always there at the very beginning. And about halfway through this like 2 or 3 hour long discussion that we were having about it, she was like, this can't be it, because I basically just want this woman to be the hero of this story. And I was like, yes, you're right. So we like tossed her out. So if I ever bring back an Annie Oakley style heroine, don't tell anybody that it was just like, she was like, you know, on the cutting room floor from the first Hell's Bells book. But this is a good example of like how I write. Like I spend a lot of time just going like, well, what if this happens? And then wander around in the darkness for a while until I realize like, no, I've just written a second heroine in the book. And no one will want Caleb to end up with Cecily if I write this. So
no, that's the thing. The second you said one in a hand of cards, I'm like shipping them together.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, that's the other, and it's such an old-fashioned romancy kind of thing, like one in a hand of cards. And I mean, for sure, I'm going to write that someday. So because, you know, at some point I'm going to have to. But yeah, it just wasn't the right story for this particular book.
Understandable.
And you have a casino where that could happen eventually someday.
I know, right? I love it. I don't feel like those guys, I don't feel like their wives would allow a woman to get one in a hand of cards at the casino there. In fact, the line will probably be like, if this had only happened at the Fallen Angel, this never would have happened.
So throughout the book, we have some references to Caleb calling Cecily Athena. And as we know, as MacLeaners, you love some Greek mythology being worked into your books. We have a lot of like references to armor throughout the book, and like Cecily loving to like protect herself and to create like distance between like these heavy emotions she has at times. And so can you talk about like thinking of crafting that duality of her being so like visible and like the scandal, but also kind of protecting herself throughout all of the book?
Yeah, I mean, Cecily, the kind of joy, I was really nervous. I knew, like I said, right away that she was going to be a Belle, and I knew she would be the first Belle because I felt like, I always feel like bringing somebody from an old series, and I've done this a number of times, right? I usually start a series with a heroine from an earlier series. And I do that because I feel like it's a gift to readers who've been with me for a long time. Like, obviously it's always publishers and, you know, the whole world is always like, well, who are the new readers? Like, how do you get more readers? And I value you all, you know, don't tell everybody, but like, I do value you all more than I value the person who walked into a bookstore today and picked up Bombshell, right? Like, and so it's always a little bit of a gift to readers. I always honored that as a reader and I still am a romance reader, but when I was young and like reading romances, it mattered to me to see those characters again. So bringing Cecily forward was not a question, but once I really had her in front of me and all I had of her was Cecily, the kind of badass bombshell, I was like, there's so much, I can't do very much with this, right? Like she has to have so much more. And I went back and I read all the bits with Cecily in the earlier books, and she was such a rich character. And this is not me like bragging. It's like, I didn't realize that I had sort of given myself so much to work with. Like, she's the one who says to Lily in A Scot in the Dark, like, you never let them see you like be upset. You never let them see how they impact you, because if you do, they'll never stop. Like, this is how you stop them. And so I had this moment where I was like, well, Cecily has such depth to her, but also like, she doesn't want to have children, and she doesn't, like, love isn't the only thing for her. Like, she has this wide world of purpose. And I feel like I always say my heroines would be happy with or without a love match at the end of a book. Like, if it went the opposite way, they'd still live happily ever after. But Cecily really would live happily ever after without some man. Like, she needed like the best man to be with her, and somebody who understood her like top to toe. So now I am forgetting the question that you asked because I'm just love lettering about Cecily. But
you answered the question. The love letter.
Good. Yeah, like, so I just really wanted her to be. I also feel like in historical romance, especially, this isn't true in contemporary, and contemporary's doing a much better job of this, I think, than historical has until very recently. Although now we have Joanna Shoup and Diana Quincy and Sophie Jordan and me and, others like Lenora Bell really writing like characters, or you guys have been reading Tessa Dare, like writing heroines who are not like soft and gentle all the time. Yes. But for a long time, historical really has been about writing heroines who want to have children, want to get married, want to fall in love, like want all these things that they can't have. But Cecily doesn't want those things. Like, Cecily wants to like burn it the fuck down. And also like hang out with her sisters sometimes. Yes.
Yeah. So life feels very full.
Yeah. And I also, that was part of it too. Like, I wanted, like, she doesn't want children. And I was like, she's not going to have children. Like, she just doesn't need to. Yeah, she's the best aunt.
No, I love that. So something else that we really particularly loved in this book was the place. And we've really seen you kind of over the course of your career create these like safe spaces for your like women and like other marginalized characters. And I'm curious about how going from, Minerva House to the place and everything in between, how has your view of creating these safe spaces changed in terms of thinking about what they need to offer for your characters?
Right. I think my heroines are more fearless now than they were then. And I've been talking about this. I haven't been talking about it, but I've been thinking about it since I wrote Hattie's book. And I feel like Hattie like turned a corner for me in a lot of ways, because I feel like that was Brazen in the Beast, for those of you who don't know. And my first book, 9 Rules to Break When Romancing a Rake, my first romance was Callie, the heroine there, was like a very different kind of heroine. And I felt like Hattie was Callie all grown up, right? Like, Callie was the character that I wrote when I was 28. And Hattie was the character that I wrote 10 years later when I was like, or more than 10 years, a little longer than 10 years. Like when I had and she's different, right? She lives out loud in a way, like, to use a phrase from Bombshell, right? Like, starting with Hattie, I started writing heroines who were like not ashamed to live out loud. And I think you will find that with all of the Bells. They're not ashamed of it. And so when they're in their place with their people, they're able to be themselves. And I want women in the world to be able to be themselves and live their best lives and not be hindered by space and rules. So here we are, right?
At the place.
Yeah. And this one, somebody just said, yeah, that quote you just highlighted, they've been in conversation with current events. And I mean, I did not expect this week to happen simultaneous with the release of Bombshell, but like, Bombshell's about whisper networks. It's about groups of women who need things and find each other to get them done. And it feels like that's very real now. And I've said for years that I think historical romance offers a space to have this conversation through the lens of fantasy in a way that contemporary romance can't do it as fun, because it's too real in contemporary. Yeah. It feels too much like the life we're living. But if I put it down in a tavern in Victorian London with a bunch of women who have leather-lined pockets and carry, blades strapped to their bodies, then like, I can tell the story. I can have a very overt conversation about women and power and the way the world treats us in a way that it's harder to do in contemporaries with fun.
No, I agree. And I think that's where reading that ends up when we sometimes feel so helpless and powerless in our own lives. Like reading that feels so empowering. And I think helps to give us a little bit of the hope back.
Yeah. And I was reading a community of women that I just wanted because I was sitting alone in my house during a pandemic. Right. And now I'm like, oh, wait a second. No, I wrote a community of women that I want now because it feels like the whole world is against me again. And I need my girls, right? Like I need my squad.
Exactly.
And speaking of our community that we've built, we have a question from Sophie from pre-live show. So she wanted to know about the theme of light and darkness that you use throughout the book that she really loved discussing this week during our Discord chats, and wants to know like how you weave themes like that throughout your story.
Light and dark is something I'm really into, which people who've read The Bare Knuckle Bastards will not be surprised by at all. And I think that Cecily's, I really like, on a very broad, like not a thoughtful answer to this question, is I really like scenes that are at night. Like I like things to be said at night because I like to close the circle, right? I like it to feel like the two characters or the, whoever the characters are alone together. But in this book, it is about light, right? It's about being able to live out loud, to love out loud, to have your community be out loud, to, I think this is one of the first times I've ever written a sex scene during daylight hours. Like when there's like light outside, they can see each other. And I wanted Cecily to be seen for who she was, and I wanted her to be loved for who she was, and she deserves all of those things, like all my heroines, like all of us, but Cecily almost more than everyone else because she's been so maligned for so long. Yeah. But also, I really like it when heroines use darkness to their own benefit.
Mm-hmm. Yes, so, which she does so well.
Right at the very beginning.
Right. So a fun question. So the Bells obviously all have their own special set of skills. If you were to join them, what would your special skill set be? What are you bringing to the table, Sarah?
I don't know. That's a hard question. I don't think I would bring any of the skills that these four bring, to be honest. I don't know, comic relief. Like the inability to keep my thoughts to myself.
Like, I mean, a powerful weapon. You can pick locks. You picked a lock once.
I can pick one lock. That's true. That's true.
When I saw this question, I thought Kelly's would be like hand delivering like poisoned like macarons to people.
Yeah, let's do that. Kelly, can I put like a baker with a poison baker in the book?
Oh, yes. Of course you can do it. Oh my God. Yeah, no, I would like need to go through training with them. To learn all of the amazing skills that they have.
I mean, I just love, Joanna Shoup says that you're in a Sarah MacLean novel if somebody gets justifiably punched in the face. And I love that. So, like, that's now my check. It's on a sticky note on my in my office next to my computer, because it's like, that's the truth, right? Somebody has to justifiably be punched in the face all the time. And now I want heroines to do it. Like, that's my new thing. I'm like, okay. But writing that bar brawl, I've said this before, but that bar brawl was like my very favorite, day of last year was writing that scene.
That felt like an epic, like end of book scene, but you gave it to us so early.
So
I know. Then I had to figure out how I was going to top it.
Oh my God. No, it gave me such, I don't know if you've seen Birds of Prey, but it was giving me those kind of Birds of Prey vibes in terms of like this epic group of women just like kicking ass nonstop. It was
Yeah.
Very cinematic.
Yeah, if you're looking for like a quiet Regency, this is not for you. This book is not for you. But I feel like we didn't lie. Like the cover really does reveal
yes. We know what we're getting here. Like,
yeah.
We haven't really talked about the other Bells, but particularly in our like group chat this week, we're all obsessed with Imogen and Thomas Peck, and we are like dying, but also salivating for their like banter relationship. She like jumped off the page at us, and so everyone kept bringing up Miss Scarlet and the Duke, which we know you love. Like,
yeah, I do love that.
Were they like an inspiration for that couple?
It was sort of something in the ether, right? I was writing, I mean, first of all, here's what I will say. The Duke, I mean, that pelty beard, yeah, I did give Peck a beard because I was like, that's hot. We're going to do that. And then I was like, it's not fair that only contemporary heroes get to have beards. Like, Victorian heroes get to have beards too. In the MacLeaniverse, that's canon.
Justice.
But it's interesting because I actually find Miss Scarlet to be a really annoying character. And so that was never, I was writing the book. I watched Miss Scarlet and the Duke after I was like finished drafting the book. So Imogen and Peck were already on the page. I did go back and give him a beard because of the Duke. I confess that. No, but Imogen is way more insane, for lack of a better term, than Miss Scarlet, who, has some sort of semblance of, what is of propriety maybe, and also, personal safety. Imogen just like, she's a worry.
You're like this whole time, like, oh no, I have to write her whole book.
I know. There's a reason why she's not next, because I was like, she needs to be on ice for a little while. I don't know what I'm going to do with her. No, but I mean, clearly, when I knew I was going to write a Scotland Yardsman, way before, like right when I started out with the Bells, because it felt like, obviously, there's Scotland Yard is coming to be historically, and also I knew like they were going to be doing crimes, so I really liked the idea of there being a Scotland Yardsman who like was kind of after them, but also couldn't resist that. Like, yeah, it was like this is amazing. Like, who are these vigilante ladies? And then once I knew that, I was like, well, obviously, the worst of them has to be his heroine, right? Because it's that Sandra Brown, like, if your hero's a fireman, your heroine has to be an arsonist. Like, I was like, all right, well, there has to be an arsonist. And then I was like, let's just make her a literal arsonist. Move forward. Perfect. Yeah.
No, I mean, we are really excited for her story. I'm particularly pumped about the Duchess. I always love those characters you have who are kind of pulling the strings in the background. Yeah. And for someone who knows everyone else's secrets, she is like keeping hers so close to the chest. Like, and she has this wonderful little line at the end where she's like, love is nonsense. And I'm like, just you wait. Like, I'm so excited. But can you tease anything else for us? Like, how are you doing right now? Where are you at? When are we going to find more details out?
Yeah.
What can you tell us?
You are going to hear, I think we're going to release the title for, I've sort of told I've done a few interviews where I've said the title for book 2 is Heartbreaker. The heroine is Adelaide. You have met her hero. It is the Duke of Claiborne. And that's what I'll tell you about that. You're going to learn a lot about Adelaide's background. Adelaide's past is very different from everyone else's past. And then, so that's that. Imogen and Peck, you already know, obviously, I would not betray you with that. And also the other reason why I needed them to be on ice is because I need a Scotland Yardsman for another book. And then, it can be his book. The Duchess, yes, loves it when a plan comes together and is a master, like a puppeteer, right? And also has access to so much information, which is great. And I think what I will tell you is that at least now the plan, and granted it's a 3-year plan, so, you know, I reserve the right to change it. But the plan right now is for the kind of villain in each book to become slightly larger. So like you've met like one man in this book who is terrible. And then in the next book, it will be a slightly bigger villain. There will be the idea was that it would be a lot like a kind of Buffy, you know, season situation where there's a big bad and the big bads become, you know, more bad and more big over the course of the series. So by the time we get to Duchess, you'll have, hopefully, if I pull it off, you'll have the Bells, and then you'll have, you know, their 3 heroes and possibly other people who have joined the group. And then they'll all be facing down a much larger hero. Yeah, Thanos. But I'm not killing half of them at the end. They're all going to live.
Thank goodness. So yeah. Amazing. Lots to look forward to then.
But I will tell you, in typical MacLean fashion, there are some twists along the way. I know what they all are. And I, as always, know what the final scene of the whole series is. So
I can't wait.
Yeah.
Can't wait.
So before we get to some audience questions, we have a little fun game. So we came up with the Belle most likely to. So we pulled some like fun things your heroines have done from previous books. And we'd love for your take on which Belle from this series do you think would commit these acts of women from the past series?
Okay. All right, I got it.
Okay, so rapid fire. We have the Belle most likely to throw a man out of a moving carriage.
Imogen. 1,000%. Wait, I feel like I should have saved that up, but it's for sure Imogen. It's just quick. Yes. The Duchess.
Ooh.
Then we have the Belle most likely to dare a duke to
anniversaries. Adelaide.
Most likely to push someone in a pond.
Well, I mean, it's all a family business, so let's say Cecily. That's Cecily too, the nude portrait.
Be a card counter.
That's probably Adelaide, but it could be. It's Duchess probably.
Ride astride.
All of them. In both ways. Stop a duel. That's definitely not Imogen. She's bloodthirsty. Probably also Duchess because that's not the crime they're interested in doing today. Mm. Right. That's out of the plan.
Run a gambling hell.
I don't know. That's a good one. Probably Adelaide, considering. Yeah.
I like that.
Like we're learning.
Learn to pick a lock.
That's also Adelaide. Adelaide's like a master thief, so.
Oh.
And then we have breed hybrid plants.
I mean, for poison, it's probably Imogen, right? I mean, she invents chloroform. Fun fact, two other people in the world, someone in America and someone in Germany, invented chloroform in the same year as this book. So I figured it was very logical for Imogen to have invented chloroform. So.
I love it. All right.
Sadly, media chloroform is not the same as real life chloroform. Apparently it takes a lot longer for you to pass out.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I mean, like television has really done us a disservice with this because it feels like, like a handkerchief over the nose and boom, you're out for like several hours. It takes like a while. I mean, I was like, listen, if all of television can use it this way, I'm using it this way too. But that's why don't come at me, you guys. I know the science. I know I'm wrong.
Respect.
Exactly. The belle most likely to write letters to her long lost love. Pass. I can. It could be too spoilery.
Too spoilery. We got too close. All right. So we have a few minutes left. So if you're watching and you have any questions for Sarah, Dana can bring them up on the screen. There we go.
That's a good question. I don't. I should probably. But in this case, I mean, like, so Kate Claiborne and Megan Frampton are both good friends of mine. And I figured, I mean, like, first of all, Megan, who wouldn't want a belle named after them is my question. And she was like, yes. And here's what I gave them instead of asking permission. I gave them the book as soon as it was ready. And I was like, you guys, here's the book. You can read it months early. And then Kate was like, oh my God, he has such a stick up his ass. I can't wait to watch him fall. And I figured if she really didn't want it to be Claiborne, then she would have told me. But I mean, I probably would ask if I was making a villain. I mean, I did ask Kelly if I could invent a poisonous baker, a poisoner / baker.
She can be.
That's it. That's done.
Yep. Permission granted.
Canon now.
McLean canon. She's
Italian, and that's that.
Really friends with Juliana.
Exactly.
So then from Elizabeth, which do you prefer? There's only one bed. Let's get you out of these wet clothes.
Let's get you out of these wet clothes. You might get hypothermia. We have to lie together.
Safety first.
Exactly.
I mean, the pairing together would be great as well.
Yes, agreed.
From Nick, are we going to get more insight info into Queen Victoria's reign as these books go on and how she's influencing the belles, women in general?
Yeah, I think so. There is a side belles. So there are 4 main belles who you've met. And then there are these side belles, all of whom, well, not all of whom, but some of whom you've met. So you've met Mithra Singh, who is a lady brewmaster. And she's Punjabi. And it's, Victorian England. If you're going to write a person who is Punjabi in a book, you have to acknowledge a lot of the shitty things Queen Victoria was doing at the time. And also that's a lot of patriarchy that can be burned down. So I expect you'll see more about Queen Victoria. I expect it will be much of the same, which is a queen on the throne and the entire country is in chaos because, God forbid, we should put women in power or give women any extra power because they might get ideas.
Dangerous.
So
scandalous.
Yes.
From Sophia, did Temple Whitgrace train the belles for fighting?
Oh.
She'll write some fanfic if not.
I mean, have at it, Sophie. I want to read that. That would be amazing, P.S., but not that is not canon. If you would like it to be, we could do it, but I don't think it's not necessary. But also, I would also like to read that. So yeah, do that.
Before the live, Kelly and I were just talking about how much we enjoy Jen's fanfic of.
It's so good.
Jen texted me today and was like, what is the etymology of the word dick? Like, when can I use that as an insult? And I was like the 60s, the 1960s? What are you doing? And she's like, oh shit, I can't use it in my fanfic. And I'm like, your Twitter fic? Like, I think everybody's fine.
We saw that text exchange on Twitter.
She's obsessed. She's trying to like retcon the spelling of Imogen to Imogen with a J. She's obsessed. So she's going to be absolutely insufferable for 2 years.
Created a monster.
I have.
Have to refer back to that whole thread of things not to put in the book.
I know, right?
So we have this question from Elizabeth, which I feel like is a great ending point. What do you recommend we read while we rate Heartbreaker?
Well, right now I'm doing, for the next 10 days for 11 days because I thought I picked 10 books, but then it turned out I picked 11. So whatever, 10's an arbitrary number. For the chaos. For the next 11 days, I'm doing on Twitter heroines with big bombshell energy. So you can go read those. There will be 11 books there. Today's book was Sophie Jordan's The Duke Effect, which is about a heroine a lady herbalist who invents an aphrodisiac by accident, which is terrific. I feel like invents an aphrodisiac by accident has that like chaotic bombshell, like Hell's Bells energy. But you should also be reading, if you are talking about historicals, you should absolutely, I think you guys have done Joanna Shoup, but like if you haven't done Joanna Shoup, you absolutely have to because she's amazing. And her Uptown Girls series is like a blueprint for big bombshell energy. Diana Quincy. Yeah. Diana Quincy is currently writing a series that began with Her Night with the Duke, which has an Arab heroine like in a knife fight in chapter 1. Her second heroine is that heroine's cousin, and she's a lady bone setter. So that's very cool. Every girl gang needs a medical doctor around, so that's very useful. And let's see, what other books should you be reading right now? If you haven't read Alexis Daria's series that begins with You Have Me at Ola, this is a contemporary, but You Have Me at Ola, and the second book is a lot like Adios, and it comes out, I think, next week. That's linked together by 3 cousins who call themselves the Primas of Power, and they are like a true squad who are so supportive of each other and just like, I just love them so much. And then you can read this at some point as you are waiting for Heartbreaker because it will be out next year, but before mine. And that is Adriana Herrera is starting a new historical series with Latinx heroines in Paris in the 1890s. And I have read the first one and it is amazing. So
can't wait.
I cannot wait.
Yes. So good. It's called A Caribbean Heiress's Guide to London. Oh, and you should also read India Holt. See, this is the problem asking me about recommendations. So you guys, read India Holton's The Wisteria Guide to Lady Scoundrels. The Wisteria Society of Lady Scoundrels. I always get it wrong. It has Wisteria and Scoundrels and Society in it, and in some order. But I feel like if any of you work for Berkeley, you should, or have a line into Berkeley, like they have really misserved this book because it looks from the outside like a traditional historical with like an illustrated cover. It looks like an Evie Dunsmore style cover. Except when you start reading this book, you're like, I'm confused. This book is set in the 1890s in London. It has pirates in it and assassins in it. And then on page like 5, this like elderly aunt figure, she just says out loud, I was thinking of flying the house to Bath today. And I'm like, I'm confused. Is that some sort of like historical phrasing that I didn't know? No, she literally means she's going to fly her home from London to Bath. It's the most bananas, like,
oh my God,
gas lamp fantasy, steampunk, like sparkling dialogue along the lines of Tessa Dare. Like, it's so good and so bizarre. And you all know that I love it when somebody like swings for the fences. And I feel like this book just does it. So go read that. It's great.
Okay. You're right. I had not heard it.
Sarah Kong is like, they have definitely not marketed this book correctly. This is how I feel. Like, what on earth?
No, it's like the wrong cover for that book.
Like, also, like, how? Yeah, and when I looked at the cover, I went back to the cover because I was like, maybe I'm wrong, like about what I remember about this cover. And there is a house, like, kind of like up in the upper left-hand corner of the book, like in the vines. And I'm like, no. I feel like it should just have a whole subtle. Big, like it needs like a blurb that's like, there are flying houses in this book! ! Sarah MacLean.
I mean, that's what we need. We'll tell Berkeley we have the blurb. It's like,
this book is really weird and very cool.
All right,
that on the billboard.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. I mean, there's your TikTok idea, Sarah. That's what they need to hear.
My TikTok idea is just like rebrand books that have bad covers. That's what you're suggesting. It's too many. Too many.
I mean, it's an undertaking.
It's true.
But,
Jen would approve.
yes, here for it.
Oh my God, Sophie, yes, you're totally right. The Elizabeth Boyle that doesn't mention the heroine is invisible. That's true. That is a good one. There's an old, she doesn't write historicals anymore, and I'm so sad about it, but oh my God. Now her name has just like completely gone from my head. But there's a old Avon historical where the hero is in a coma, like 85% of the way through the book. And you don't know he's in a coma because they are dreaming the book until he wakes up. And it's like, again, you would think someone would mention this.
You let people know.
And it's great. Oh my God, why is her name?
Oh.
Anne, help me. Somebody knows. Somebody in chat knows. She also wrote a casino series that is like absolutely amazing. Anyway.
I don't. All right.
It's gone from my head.
We will try to find this book because that sounds wild.
Yeah. Yeah.
But all right, I think we're at 7. So I think that is our time. A huge thank you to everyone who came to join us. Huge thank you to you, Sarah, obviously.
Thank you guys for buying the book,
insight.
for reading the book. Thank you for Summer of Sarah MacLean last year. Thank you for letting me like totally co-opt Summer of Sarah MacLean this year on my Instagram feed. I am so incredibly grateful to all of you for reading and for being so kind about the books. And thank you, Kelly, for macarons, although, you know, I would have liked to have eaten them.
I know.
But
next time. We'll hand deliver some.
Anne Mallory. Anne Mallory.
Okay, that's the coma book.
It's
Coma
red.
Dreaming
I can't.
Romance.
I don't know. Search here coma Anne Mallory and it'll come up.
We'll find it.
Okay.
That's amazing. All right. So if you are watching and you happen to not be familiar with Seasonally Booked Up, the link to our Discord is down below. Our fall read along, we're going to be on a break after this, but our fall read along is Fall of Vices and Dices. We're reading historical romances set in gambling hells. So obviously, if you like Sarah MacLean, you're going to like our fall theme.
You have to read that Anne Mallory. There's an Anne Mallory. I'm going to send you a recommendation.
Amazing.
Yeah.
We have a solid list that we're pretty excited about so far, and always looking for more. And yeah, all right. So I think
are you reading Dreaming of You?
Most of us have read it is the thing. Oh. So we were like, went for some newer ones.
Yeah.
Where's my list? We do have a Lorraine Heath, Between the Devil and Desire. Mm-hmm. Caroline Linden's My Once and Future Duke.
Yes.
The Raquel of Roth, Amelie Howard. A Gentleman Undone by Cecilia Grant.
Yep.
From Duke Till Dawn by Ava Lee.
It's called, you have to add this. It's so good. It has...
Adding it.
Oh my God, it's so good. It's Anne Mallory's One Night is Never Enough.
One Night is Never Enough. Okay.
And I want to like come and tell you all about how amazing it is in your Discord.
You will have to come
and then I'll get out. But just for that week, welcome. I want to come and like yell about, there's this chess match in that book that is like pure perfection.
We'll have to have you come on for the live that we do for that book.
Okay.
We'll do another YouTube and we can just yell about it.
Yay.
So many great things to look forward to.
So yeah, thank you, Sarah, and thank you, Kelly, and thank you everyone for watching.
Thank you so much for having me.
Have a great night. Bye, everyone.
Yeah, Sarah, hang around, and we'll end this now. But bye, everyone.
Yay. Bye.